Well, good evening, everybody. Just waiting for a few more people to come through and join us. But if someone can just fling me back a quick message just to say that you can actually hear me so that I don't end up talking to myself for the next sort of 30 minutes or so. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. That's really good to hear you and everybody else. Good, good. As we only just hit 8 o'clock, I am going to give it another minute just to see who joined us. We've got about 65 people at the moment, and we'll go on from there. I already seem to have one like. That's excellent. Given I've hardly said anything yet, that's great news. So thank you for whoever came up with that. All right, so this evening it really is going to be about the idea of talking through coming back to the senior school and just sort of going through daily routines, answering any questions that you may have at this stage. I think it's important to think about this in conjunction with the return to school handbook that you were sent from the headmaster for probably about a week ago. And that gives you a lot of the details, but I appreciate from there then there might well be some questions that come up. So I'll be watching on the chat function there just to see the questions coming through. This is not like a Google Meet where you can actually sort of have it as a two-way conversation. So the questions that you have, if you can then put them through up on the chat, and I will endeavour to answer those that you have. But I think before we do that, it might be an idea if I just go through a little bit of stuff, maybe just on sort of general routine and sort of buses and school entry and just sort of things about devices, because that might answer some of the general questions just from there. So overall, what we're trying to do is bring the school back as normal as possible as we can for September. Obviously, coming back at the end of last term, it was great to see the years 7 and 8 and the year 10 and the lower 6 back at that stage. But it did mean that we weren't allowed to actually bring back the year 9. So apart from that one sort of day that we had, it'll be the first time that we've seen some of you for a good period of time. But you know, I'm sure we'd all quickly sort of get back into the swing of things of how it is. For those of you that are new to the school, I suppose in some ways this will be the normal for you, or whatever we do coming September. I'm aware that I'm talking to some people who are new parents with new pupils coming in that I spoke to back in June, and there's probably a few of you out there as well for whom you've joined the school more recently, and in which case you probably actually don't know who I am. So I should actually probably say at the beginning is that I'm Philip Moore, and I'm the head of the senior school here at Riot School, and my job is to deal with the day-to-day management and leadership of the senior school to make sure it sort of runs all effectively. I work directly for the headmaster, Mark Waldron, who then has that oversight of the whole school, all 3 sections, the pre-prep of 5 ways, the sort of prep school section, and the senior school. Okay, so that's sort of how I fit in to within the system. So just on there then, let's just look a little bit at the idea of routine, of how it goes. We have got the buses back up and running. We just want to just ensure that that is the right, that we want to ensure that's absolutely as safe as it can be. So you will need to your children will need to use the face coverings if they're travelling via the bus, just to keep that safe. But I'm sure that that's going to be all absolutely fine, those people coming in on the buses each morning. So the transport's running. You will have seen in the handbook that we're doing slightly different times for starting, depending on what year group you're in. That just allows it to sort of stagger a little bit at the start of the day. You know, you can see that we've got different year groups sort of starting their lessons a little bit, just sort of staggered at that first little bit in the morning. But we recognise also that if you come in on one of the buses, you're going to come in at a particular time. All right, so we think it will naturally stagger itself. So the people when we came in before, and you had to go through the temperature control system, that is still going to be the same. You'll still come through that same temperature check, but we won't be asking the same questions as we did before. So it is very much just walking through. The temperature check will then be done, and then you can come through. There's a hand sanitizer station, so the children will just stop there, do a quick hand sanitize, and move on from there. All the registrations will be done by teachers in their class once they've actually got into the lessons. Okay, so that entry into the school should be a lot quicker, but we recognise that there will be a good number of pupils there, good number more pupils coming through than we probably saw back at the end of the summer term. So we'll have to see how that is going to run from there. Right, question there. Is the bus still going to run for pickup from the hover? Yes, it will. Yeah, we'll still run the bus down to the hover for the pickup in the morning. And just checking there, is this right for the sixth form as well as the senior? Yes, indeed. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions relating to sixth form as well. Okay, so once the pupils have come into the school, we are saying to parents that please don't yourselves come into the school at that point, so that we are just sort of dealing with the pupils. If you need an appointment to talk to a member of staff, we can either do those meetings virtually, that might be one way of solving that, or we can, by arrangement, set up meetings where you can come in as a visitor coming into the school. Okay, but I think, I mean, as you've probably seen in the past, often there was a reason we're very welcoming to parents. We always like to have you in the school, but at the moment we are going to have to operate that in a slightly different way. Okay. For parents with children in years 7, 8 and 9, you've seen there that we are going to be doing the groups and we'll be streaming the pupils. What that means is that largely the groups will be sort of done on ability, but that's only part of the picture. All the groups that we make there for years 7, 8 and 9, I'm then working with in years 7 and 8 with the heads of year, Mr. Willier and Mr. Olson, along with Dr. Speller, to make sure that we've got the right sort of social mix in the groups as well, because that's equally as important as to the learning as sometimes the actual academic aspect of it. And likewise, I'll do the same there with Miss Dyer for the year 9 group as well. But obviously, Dr. Speller will be able to advise on that for the year 8 pupils going up. So for the year 7 and 8, largely they will spend their time in those groups, and the pupils will move from class to class. Where we saw it in the summer, and they stayed in one room and had sort of 2 teachers that were with them all the time. What we did sort of notice now, actually, we thought it would be better for the pupils to be able to move. The teacher will very much have their own classroom, and they'll take ownership of that classroom, and they will ensure that it's kept clean, and between lessons do a quick wipe down of desks, etc., to just make sure that it's as safe as it can be. Okay. Just on there, that while I'm talking on that one there, I think the question there, will we find out the class groups, timetables, etc.? The timetables will be given to the pupils on the first day, as we normally would for children coming in there. So that comes up. That's on that first day for the pupils. We will send out the groups. You'll know which group your child is in. Kind of a little bit like we would do the set lists. And we'll get that done at some point next week. Okay, and you'll get an email through from Miss Gallup, the academic secretary, letting you know what group actually your child is in at that stage. Another question there, will we need to bring anything like masks or pens? The normal sort of school equipment of bringing your own pencil case with your pencil, ruler, protractor, etc. Pupils will be expected to bring that with them. Yes, and where I think possibly you might normally as a class sort of share a little bit more of sort of coloured pencils around maybe as a group. If they did have, I think they really probably should have their own individual sort of little little thing of coloured pencils for them, because it's not using a whole sort of class set and everybody handling those is not really going to be something we can do. Do they need to bring masks? I mean, as you saw there in the handbook, the advice is very much for school, in the school settings, that masks are not required, and certainly sort of wearing a mask for a prolonged period of time is not necessarily seen as a beneficial thing, and can potentially be more of an issue if they're not worn properly. Okay, so those are the sort of key things there. Just on that equipment side of things, we did before bring pupils had to sort of bring devices with them in terms of laptops, etc. That's not going to need to be the case this time going forward, and I'm very keen that the teachers are very much there teaching almost in a non-device way. I think we've had a lot of teaching on devices recently, and I think we need to get away from that a little bit at the same time. Okay, now let me just go down there and look at some more of the questions that are just happening there. What's happening with D of E and CCF for Year 9? Well, Year 9 would normally, for pupils coming into Year 9, D of E and CCF is something more that starts towards the end of the year rather than actually the beginning of the year. So we would hope that we'll be back to a better situation by then and things can carry on. But as you'll have seen from this year, we were able to do the D of E expeditions for the bronze, silver and gold. So they all took place at the end of the summer term for those pupils needing to qualify for those. And we're very much looking there for pupils in the Year 10, Year 11 and lower 6th in sort of bronze, silver and gold levels currently, that we will also then be able to get their expeditions up and running at that stage as well by the normal plan that we would have. So the first one being sort of September, when we are looking for the silver and gold to go out. And unless things change, then that plan will go ahead, and that's our planning at this point. Mr. Hutchinson, do you intend to stream the children? Yes, we are. As I say, that's in the documentation, as I mentioned earlier. What if they end up in the wrong group? Well, from that streaming, I looked at that quite carefully in terms of academic data. The maths is probably the lead in that, because that is one of those subjects that really does need to take the fore in it, because it then has an influence over on some of the sciences, etc. As I mentioned before, we're going to really very much try and make sure we will then look at those groups. So I've done the initial groups, and then I'm going through those with Dr. Speller and the heads of year and Ms. Dyer as well, and to make sure that we actually have the right ones from there. Will you be able to reconsider, or are the groups then fixed? Well, I think essentially we'll really be looking for them to be fixed rather than moving anybody around. The whole sort of point is really to create this sort of cluster group and then keep them as that cluster group rather than making changes as we go along, because to a certain extent, if we are going to be doing that, then realistically we probably shouldn't have bothered doing the clusters in the first place. The overall bubble is actually the year group, and I think that is a clear distinction. The difference, the difference there is that we had in the summer, they were very much as a small group there of about sort of 14, 15, well, it was no more than 15 pupils in that bubble, and they had their own area. Whereas the overall bubble now is actually the year group, so that when they're doing things like games, they can be as a group. Lunch times and breaks, they can be as part of the year group, and likewise then at break times as well. So there is much more flexibility, I think, than we had before. Just on that same point, where is the data coming from? The information there, I am looking back at sort of past data that we have on the tracking data system, and where we have new pupils coming in from the assessment data that I have on those. So certainly anybody coming to year 7, the assessment data we hold from pupils either coming from the junior school or pupils coming from the outside have done the same assessments, so we do have the same baseline data to be able to actually group those pupils. We have got Mr. Jones there. We currently have a very poor Wi-Fi connection. Only hear about that. We'll be able to re-watch this later date when you have full Wi-Fi. The answer to that question is I don't know. I don't know if it actually records and then allows you to actually go back at a later stage. Okay. But if I can certainly summarize any key points that come up from this. Okay. Just while I'm waiting if there's any more questions coming up, I think it's worth mentioning the idea of lunch times. For the lunch times, the dining hall, rather than it being sort of all pupils in there at the same time, because we're trying to keep the integrity of the bubbles, we will then make sure that we've only got a year group in there at a time. When the pupils come into school, what they will see is on the far side of the dining hall, a very large marquee has been set up. It's sort of 18 meters by 9 meters inside. So it's kind of the same size as the dining hall again. And what will happen is that pupils will go in, get their food, and one year group will be able to actually then go through and then eat in the marquee, which will be all set up with tables, and then another year group will be able to actually eat in the dining room. We've worked it in that way so that we can still see that it will still work. We still get people through in a reasonable amount of time. We have had to slightly stagger the lunch times to enable that to happen, and that also helps us with actually having space outside for the pupils to go out into the fields and play within their year group bubbles, but not then, but still then not staying away from the other pupils in another bubble. Where are we there? Question, are the languages lessons being streamed for year 9? No, year 9 is a slightly different one. Because pupils with their languages, and I think that's actually true, the same is true for year 8 actually. The language lessons they will need to do, they do separately. Whereas in the year 9, the languages will be as per their normal groups that they would have. And likewise, where they've taken options in year 9, because they made choices between drama, DT, art, music, PE, and computer science. They chose 3 out of those 6. Those groups there will have to run as their groups. So we're trying to, we're keeping the pupils together as a single group as much as we can, but at the same time, we're not then sort of destroying the overall nature of the curriculum and the timetable, so that pupils can still do the options and the subjects that they've selected. So where there is a change in things split, need split, then those things will still happen. Question there, what will you be starting the term with cricket rather than rugby? Yes, the plan is that we will start the term with cricket and not rugby. Rugby at the moment, obviously being a contact sport, is very much more difficult. We'll start the term there. How things progress from that point, I think, is a little bit of sort of wait and see with it from there. I know some people are sort of umming and ahhing about, do I need to buy a rugby kit now? It's a slightly sort of tricky one from there, and I know that some of the students are growing at quite a pace at the moment. You might want to hold off and just sort of until sort of weather degenerates a bit, and if we definitely know that we'll be able to sort of run rugby at a later stage, etc. So yeah, we're starting the term with cricket, and we'll see where we go with the rugby after that. So what is happening in regard to lunchtime clubs and after-school activities, such as use of the gym? So activities will have to run as within a year group. So you won't be able to have it. So where we sometimes have mixed year groups going through in an activity, that won't be the case now. But we will try and run still there'll still be a good program of activities that will run after school. The lunch times, because they are slightly different, that will make that much more complex. But what we can run, we will run. Mr. Sanford Smith will send out details of those. I know he's sort of planning that all through at the moment and gathering the information together. And once he's got that, he will then get that to people. But the fundamental principle of, are we running activities? Yes, we are. Yeah, we're running activities in clubs, and we will try and make that as normal as possible. But the caveat is that it can only ever be one year group at a time that are doing one particular thing. Okay. Okay, let's go from there. So for the autumn term, are you planning for usual sports fixtures to be played, e.g. rugby for the boys? Well, probably not rugby, as I said, but we'll just see where we go with the guidance on that. We are looking to be able to try and run sports fixtures where we can, and as much as we'll be creative with that, as will the other schools that we usually play against. They're very keen to make sure that we try and get fixtures up and running for their pupils, as we are for them. So, if it's possible to do things, we will. But I think it is going to be very much more limited to what we can do. I think that's going to be the truth of it there. Will there be usual CCF external activities such as flying? The answer to that, Mr. Sarah, is I actually don't know. I think what I'll do is I'll just make a note of that and sort of come back to you on that one, because that's not one that I know about at all with the CTF. I know it's going to be operating, but I'm not sure about the external things. Okay. At lunch, will there be food for people with allergies and such like? Yes, most definitely. Catering staff always do make sure that they provide for anybody with any kind of allergies and all those normal dietary requirements that we have within the school will still be catered for. Okay, you're right. We're trying to sort of make sure there's a good range of choice, and we'll still try and make sure that we're running some of the sort of snack sections as well for it. But that is also going to be in place. Certainly, any dietary requirements will be covered. Okay. Do we need to get the cricket kit as we are new into year 7? I think what I'd say there is I wouldn't go charging off and buying whites, etc. and things for that. I would say very much just sort of have the normal blue sort of bottoms that are available, because they can be used very much throughout the year. And then if you've got sort of the white or blue polo shirt, then that will be absolutely fine at that stage. So I wouldn't particularly go running out to buy a cricket kit at this stage. What will happen about orchestras and choirs, etc.? We are trying to run a music program as much as we can. It does partly a little bit depend on the instrument. I'm sure as you can appreciate, the risk of a group of people playing violins is significantly different to a risk of people when they're blowing trumpets all at each other. So it has to happen under that same principle of you can only have the year group together at any one particular time. Choirs, you could only have a single row. You can't have sort of row after row of people. But we certainly are looking there for those to run as normal as possible. And likewise, I think with as the same with the activities, Mr. Sanford Smith is working with Mrs. Tweddle to put as a fuller program together as they can offer at that point. Right, Mr. Wester, on my title, I haven't got German, it is all French. Is that going to change? For people coming into year 7, we are doing that, is that it will just be French in the first term. Okay, so there'll be an extra lesson of French to the normal ones, and the choices for year 7 between the Mandarin, the German and the Latin, we're looking for that to kick in at Christmas, when we hope that we'll get back to a much more normal timetable at that point. But as I say, at this stage, because of the sort of change around that causes, we felt that was something we didn't necessarily need to do at this point. So you'll get an extra input into French. Everybody's new into French at this point, essentially, and then you'll get a chance to pick up those languages a little bit later in the year. Okay. Well, do that. Maybe we could swap rugby for football. Yes, I mean that's the kind of thing. As you said, the department there, our director of sport, Mr. Bagnall, will look very creatively at it and look and all those kind of things. Let's swap some rugby for football, that sort of thing. But we are going to try and start with the cricket because obviously we really didn't get any cricket in at all last term. The weather's been very kind to us. The grounds are looking very good for cricket at the moment, and as much as we can, if we can do that for the first part, that's going to be great. But I think we can assume that some come time, sort of half-termish, we are definitely going to need to sort of swap round on that, and football could be the answer at that point. Okay. Activities. Will we need to wear shorts as I can't due to my religion? Well, if you're for your religion, if you don't wear shorts, then that's absolutely fine. You will be able to wear long tracksuit bottoms at all points. That's no problem the slightest. What sports will the girls be playing from September? Well, they're looking to actually carry on with the hockey. That's the principle there. Is that they're trying to actually get up and running with the hockey. They might well try and do a little bit of cricket in as well as part of that mix, because obviously the girls did were doing some cricket for the year as well. But I think they're going to very much get underway there with the hockey, given that's much easier to do than it is with the rugby. Okay, are the timetables on the parent portal largely correct? If the new timetables are on the parent portal, I wasn't aware that they were, then I think they should be correct. There are tiny adjustments to the timetable at this stage as we just sort of work through a tiny problem. But fundamentally, I think we can accept those as being correct if they are timetables as for this year. So I wasn't 100% sure they've actually gone on the portal yet. But if you are seeing them on the portal, then for the time there. A couple of people there checking about the time that the day finishes. So the normal school day finishing time of 4:20 will still be in place for Monday through to Friday. And at that point there, all pupils will sort of leave and depart at the same time. We did toy with the idea of trying to do a staggered finish, but that made things very complex. And we'll just try and make sure that we sort of students are going out in groups rather than sort of great masses as they sort of go out from the school. Coming into the school, it's probably worth highlighting that the West Street gate isn't open. That sort of big black wrought iron gate on the West Street, for those of you that are used to that entry, that won't be open in the mornings, and you will have to come through the main Bembridge building, through the main reception, because everybody needs to be temperature checked. But in the afternoon, when people are going out from the school, then obviously it is then possible to have those gates open. So we'll actually have two flows of exit at that point. Okay. Just there. All right. Just as saying, there's a few gaps on the timetables. There are a few gaps. Yes, that is the case. I was looking at a timetable for somebody earlier, and I saw two lessons that weren't quite put in at that point. Those things are being just finalised. The academic secretary who inputs all that data, she's not with us here this week, but she's back next. And any of those last few adjustments that need to be made will come in there. So by the time we get to the start of term, those timetables on the portal will be complete. But as I said before, the pupils will be given a copy of their timetable on that first day. So they'll get a hard copy of that at the same time. Will squash be available as a choice for year 11? Don't know. Don't know about that one. I will speak to Mr. Sanford Smith. I'll just make a note of that one. Speak to Mr. Sanford Smith, and he will, that in the details that he sends out, that kind of thing should then become clear. Okay. Okay. So, so we've seen a sixth form and a year 7 timetable. Yeah, as I say, if the things are on the portal, then I say I haven't seen exactly what's been published to the portal at this point, but certainly before the beginning, before we get to the beginning of term, all timetables will have been published, and they'll get a hard copy. Okay, so when do the year 11 exams start? So is it just year 11 sitting exams in September? No, it isn't just year 11 sitting exams in September. It will be the upper sixth as well. They, obviously the year 10 and the lower sixth summer exams were missed, and those two particular year groups we saw as very important as getting those up and running sort of straight away. If my memory serves me correctly, it's the Tuesday or it's the Tuesday or Wednesday of that second week that we actually then start into those exams. So it's just a few days in, and then boom, we start the exams and get those up and running pretty much straight away. For the years 7, 8, and 9, we will do exams. Well, not year 7, for the pupils who were in year 7, 8 and 9. So that's now 8, 9 and 10. We will have exams running then that will be more around by half term. Okay, if you see on the online calendar, you'll see dates there that actually relate to exactly those assessments. We felt actually it's not really feasible to run it all at one particular point. So we thought we'd stagger that. We do that with for the year 11 and the upper sixth, because obviously they're in exam years, get that feeding information from them first, and then just go back and work with the pupils from the other ones. Okay. All right, let's just see what they. All right, so somebody else just asking there if the clubs will be running any form. Yes, we will try and run the activities in clubs as much as we can. We can only have a year group in one particular, within a particular group, otherwise we destroy the bubble system. But we will run that as much as we can, and Mr. Sanford Smith will provide details of that. Okay, where are we there? Mr. Savage, we will get more details on the Year 7 Familiarisation Day mentioned in the calendar. Yes, you will. I was actually sitting down and talking that through with Dr. Speller today. Normally, or this is actually relevant to all new pupils coming in, is that, on the Monday before term starts on the 8th, so this is Monday the 7th of September, you would normally have times where the pupils are coming into school, they're getting a chance to meet their tutor. You as parents get a chance to meet the tutor as well. We are going to really need to run that virtually because of the numbers involved and the way that works. It's not really possible to run that in school, which is a shame. We looked at logistics of trying to run that in school, but see that we really couldn't. So you will get details on that. So I worked through those details with Dr. Sabella today, and we will get those out to you. Anybody coming in new to the lower sixth, it is different. You might well have already had details about the day, that sort of first day that the pupils have on that Monday the 7th. They all come in and do different activities and different things together, so they get a chance to sort of just start that sort of next section of the school all as one group. That will still run for the pupils, although the parent part of that, which normally runs sort of in the afternoon, that will need to be virtual. So the same kind of ideas where you get to meet your child's tutor will happen, all of those things, but we would just say the basic message is most of it will be virtual. Okay, and we'll get details out of that from there. Okay, where are we there? Let's just go back to all the questions. Thank you, Mr. East. So that year 9 is on too. So it sounds like there actually quite a lot of the year groups are on. Will the children be assessed on their return in year 8? Yes, they will. As I said there, that will happen around about half term. The only difference that we will do is that we will do the tracking data assessments towards the end of that first week. And that just gives us that overall sort of benchmark data. Those are assessments that you don't prepare for. So it's not as if you actually sort of really need that time back in school. They are snapshots of more of ability than attainment at that particular point. So pupils in years 7, 8 and 9 will do those towards the end of that first week. Okay. When do new parents get passwords, etc., to access the parent portal? That will come out with the information that Mrs. Gallup sends to you. So when we send out the setting and the information at that point, which as I said is happening next week, details of that will all be included in there. I'll just need to double check. I'll double check that with her to make sure that definitely goes in, because things are slightly different. So I've just made a note of that to ensure that I do check that with her. Do they wear PE kit to school on games days, or will they be allowed to change in school? We have said in the handbook that they should wear their games kit to school on the days that that they have games. That's absolutely fine. The pupils are usually quite keen on that to avoid that issue of like a whole sort of year group having to try and change at one point. So yeah, on games days, bring those in. Not so on individual PE lessons. So where the individual PE lesson happens there, that is still possible because it's sort of within, because the pupils are still within their cluster group that they would normally be in their sort of stream class. So that's absolutely fine. And I would say that also for activities that are taking place after school, I think I'd rather see pupils bringing their kit in rather than spending all day in kit just for an activity that happens after school. Okay. If your daughter really doesn't want to come into school in PE kit, I think that's one we can certainly look at that, and you know, we want to do what's right for an individual. If that's the case, so we can certainly look into that. It's no problem. Right. Any other questions there? I think I've answered quite a few at that point. Just going back to my list, just to work through there. Individual music lessons, a little bit like with the overall music. Individual music lessons will be able to take place depending on the instrument. In the small confined practice rooms, it's probably playing a piano is not a problem, but I go back to my trombone or saxophone again, then I think it's going to be more of an issue. The details of that will be sent out. Well, as I said to you at the beginning there, the details of activities, clubs and music arrangements will be sent to you by Mr. Sanford Smith. And he will do that. Okay, so that's individual music lessons. Lambda lessons where they take place we'll try to run as well. This is do people need to bring in a laptop? No, they don't. Essentially, we have now the the banks of Chromebooks, etc., and things that we have in school. We have the keyboard wipes, so that we'll be able to use those to clean the keyboards. And to be able to keep those safe. If pupils want to bring their own device into school, then I don't see a problem with that. I'm perfectly happy for somebody to bring a device into school and use it, but it's not to say that we're going to actually sort of make that sort of say, please have all your devices sort of with you at the point. Talking of devices, it's probably worth mentioning phones at this point, because that will certainly be something on the pupils' minds. Year 7 and 8, traditionally we say that they come in the morning and they hand their phones in and put them into a box. That's not realistic at the moment at all. So we're saying to the pupils, bring your phones in with you, but in year 7 and 8, they should be put away in your locker or put away just in your bag and not seen around with you during the school day. The only exception would be that if a member of staff said that they wanted you to try and use your phone, although there is actually no requirement that any pupil brings a phone with them. Okay, so that's really is a I think is an important point there on phones. So that's where we are. Where are that? So could you let me there? So that see about the groups are being streamed. So I said that. I mean, streaming is about ability. So there, I've been through and looked at what looks like the right profile of ability. Maths was my guiding one because that is one that the math and the science is the one where it is really helpful to have that. But I've then also looked to see what makes sense in terms of people's English groups, etc. And where I know about what sort of social groups and things, the social mixes, so the dynamics of the classes are right, I've put that in. And that's my next point there, is the next part of that process is that I now take that to Dr. Speller, Mr. Rosen and Mr. Willier and Ms. Dyer, and we work it all through so that we make sure that we've got the right dynamics of people within the groups as well. Okay, so largely ability, but we will also make sure the groups are right for the social, for that sort of social dynamic aspect. Okay. Where we're there, will the pastoral room next to the sick bay be available? Yes, is the answer to that. It will be to pupils of the same year group. So if two pupils there were from a particular year group wanted to go and sit there and discuss something, then that would be possible. Okay, what we can't have is, say, somebody from year 8 and somebody from year 9 actually using that sort of space from there. I think, I mean, overall, where we can do things outside, we will try and do things outside. And we will try and, you know, and I think that is the best thing that we can do. But, you know, we don't also at the same time don't want to go cutting things off. Okay. Okay. So see, I missed one there. When will lower sixth make games choices, and do they arrive in games kit as well? The answer is, will they arrive in games kit? Then yes, I think preferably we would want them to arrive in games kit. And when will they make their choices? Then they will make those choices at the beginning of the year. So as they come into lower sixth, at that point there, they'll be given the options and choices to be able to you know, sort of see what things they'll be able to do from the program and things we can offer. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Neem. Yeah, it's good to hear that you found it useful. That's, I mean, you know, we just wanted to be able to, you know, but when you sort of write the handbook sort of side of things, as much as it can sort of clear in our own heads here, it doesn't always come out that sort of way. You look at it from there. When will the year 7 pupils get their lunch payment cards? That'll happen in the first couple of days. What we do on the first day is very much we get them through and do their photos, and we will still do that. So we'll get the photographs all done, and then we use those photographs to upload onto the computer system, which then generates the cards. So we will get that done within those first couple of days. And as if my memory serves me rightly, up until that point, we sort of work with temporary cards for each of the pupils until that stage. Okay, so we'll certainly get that done the first as soon as possible. We don't print them beforehand because they do have their photos on them as well. Okay. Mr. Kipot, yeah, they repeat the point regarding the social dynamics and the streaming. Yeah, so just to clarify that point then. So I have been through looking at the data that for years 8, 9, and years 8 and 9, certainly fundamentally, the setting information that was provided to me by the heads of department, because they had all the academic data on the pupils, either from tracking data or from tests that they've done, etc., earlier in the year. And from those setting arrangements, I then looked and created in years 7 and 8 4 different streams. They are largely based on ability, but not exclusively, because I'm certainly aware of certainly the arrangements of some of the pupils, and there was things that I wanted to, to ensure would work. Essentially, from there, I am now going to. I'm now passing those forward to Dr. Speller and Mr. Alderson and Mr. Willier to look through and then make adjustments and suggestions and changes to them to actually ensure that the social dynamic is also correct within the groups. Okay, so I don't want to have created a group that does not work as a social dynamic, and they are the people there with the actual real detail of knowing what works and what doesn't sort of work from there. I mean, I would say that largely from the streaming, there is a sort of like an upper group and a low group, and then sort of the two in the middle are much more sort of flexible in how I've set that up. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense for you there. Right, Mr. Leyland, can you find it related to school buses, in particular to the West White bus? Okay, so buses are operating. Pupils will need to wear masks when they're on the bus, as they would do normally if they need the public transport. That'll be the case. But with the West White, I think that's the interesting one there, because there is going to be sort of two West White buses operating, one that's going earlier, sort of at that pretty much at the end of the school day, and another one that will be operating a bit later. Okay, I don't have the exact details of that for you, Mr. Leyland, here, but I know that the bus is operating as per normal. But if I remember it absolutely right, for the West White bus, there is now an additional service that will actually act within that, just to ensure that the numbers work on the buses for them. Okay, so I think that should be allowed to be a little bit of flexibility. So, Mr. Speaker, not completely based on ability then. No, not completely. Largely, yes, but not completely, because I think it's right, because these pupils will spend a reasonable chunk of time together, certainly in year 7 and year 8, I think it's right that we get the dynamics of that right as well. Right, Ms. McKinnon, will year 10 be similarly streamed? No, is the answer to that, because pupils have selected options for year 10, then it really doesn't work to try and stream that at that point. So year 10 will operate as normal, with the sets in for English, sets for maths, and then for science, and then the options that the pupils have selected for themselves. Okay, so it is operating really fundamentally as normal when it comes to year 10, year 11, and the sixth form as well. Okay, seem to be going a little bit quiet there on the chat, and that's absolutely fine. I'm happy to, I'll stay on a bit longer. And so, how many groups are there in year 9? Actually, there'll be 5. Okay, there'll be 5 groups in year 9 because it's a larger year group. So we're just sort of working it that way. Okay. So as I say, I will stay here for a few more minutes just to answer any further questions that come through from anybody. But after, but if you think most of your questions have been answered, then obviously, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of the time. I will be, for myself, if you wanted to contact me, I will actually be taking a little bit of time off from the end of tomorrow through to the Thursday next week. It's, as you can probably imagine, with the exams and everything going on, it's been rather a hectic time over the last few weeks here in school, and just take a little bit of a break from that point there. Right, back to the questions then. What do you mean by social dynamics, and what do I mean by criteria for this? What I really mean from there is just making sure that we have groups of people that actually will kind of get on and work together. And where sometimes there's been issues and problems, we will try to make sure that we don't put some of those people back together. So the heads of year and the heads of section know the pupils very well, and they're going to help and guide me as part of that process. So is there a set criteria? No, it is more about there of just taking the advice of Dr. Speller and the heads of year for 7 and 8 about making sure those groups are right. Okay. So Hudson, around 50% of the intake from year 7 are from elsewhere. I know. Have you know to assess the groups for the right time? No. That is actually much more of a problem. I will have to agree there. If in the year 7, to a large extent, I've then taken, we've sort of worked more on the ability side of things for the year 7 at that point. We do get reports in from the juniors from local primary schools and things that where other places people are coming from. But I think the same is true when we sort of do form groups, etc. Normally for the year 7, there's a big mix of people, and we just put them together and we sort of work things from there. So yeah, so for year 7, it's largely going to be done on the academic ability that came from the assessments. The same, we have assessments for everybody that joins us in there. Okay, is there tutor time? Largely, no. You will. What happens is that the pupils come in, and for the year 7, it's from 8:35. So year 7 and year 11. Year 7 and 6 will be year 7. Let me just remind myself on that one so I get to say the right thing. Yep, so year 7 and 6th form, their registration sort of happens in period 1. So they come in, they get registered at the beginning there of their period 1, and then on they go from there. And then for years 9 and 10, they sort of start off at 8:50, and there's a little bit of registration time that gets built into the second lesson in that case. And the same there for years 8 and 11. Their period 1 starts at 8:50, and then their period 2 is slightly extended to include a bit of a registration time. Okay, so it will be sort of slightly different. Will the house system be feasible? We're going to try and keep the house system going as much as we can, but to do that we need to run most of those things virtually. So it's not going to be exactly the same as it was before, but certainly we don't want to lose the identity of house by all the arrangements that we're having to make. Okay. Okay, there. Have you got different staggered start times for each year, please? Just went through those. Hopefully that answers your questions there today. Okay, Mrs. Hinton, thank you very much. I'm glad I'm safe. Good, glad that you found it informative. That's really helpful. Okay. Presuming, Mr. Minchin, presuming normal pickup time for West White bus. Yep, pickup times as per normal. Okay, nothing changed there. Okay. So, well, it's good to see from those messages there that you found it a useful session this evening, and your children's either current tutor, if they're carrying on with them, will be in touch, and our new tutors will be in touch at the beginning of the academic year, and they will still remain that sort of fundamental contact point for your child. Although they won't see them as much, they will still be the person that's actually coordinating all the information and making things work for them. So that the tutor is still very much on that. So Mr. Sims, how flexible are the start times? One in JS, one in SA. Would like to both walk together. Of course they would. Absolutely understandable. They are flexible, and we're totally aware that people will need to make arrangements for that to be the case. It's anybody coming with their 2 children in the car certainly can't do that at a different time. So yeah, more than happy for for Ollie and Seb to walk together into school, Mrs. Sims, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Minchin. Yeah, we've, you've seen, we've done all different things over the last few months to try and get things up and running and work as smoothly as they can. Lots of it's been the step into the unknown and doing things for the first time rather than having any kind of experience to rely upon. But it sharpens you up. That's certainly the case. And I think with all of this, there's an element that we will, you know, will we have to adjust things as we go along? Of course we will. We've tried to think of most eventualities, but there will be things that pop up, and yeah, that we'll deal with them. But we will deal with them as they go along to make sure that, you know, it's a good school experience. We want, you know, we always, you know, we find that fact that pupils say that they thoroughly enjoy coming here to school every day at Ryde. It's not like a chore for most of them. They really, really enjoy it. And we just want that to continue. We want the education to be back on there at full speed for them. And, you know, we'll adjust and make it work as you have there. Okay. So, I say I'm going to stay on probably about the next 4 minutes there just to deal with any last questions that pop up. But I say if you think most of your questions have been answered, then please do you know, be getting asked last questions. Sorry, so Mrs. Hawkins there, how will Year 7 classes work? So Year 7 classes, essentially they are going to be as a group together. For the Year 7, they will, I'm putting them into streamed groups. For Year 7, that's largely based on ability. We're just running that for the moment until things get into a different place, and then we'll go back to our normal arrangements, which is much more sort of form-based with sets then for English, Maths and Science. But until that point, we put them into groups so that the pupils will then stay as that group. They will move from class to class. The teachers will stay where they are. The pupils will move from class to class, again, they've got different sorts of scenery and see different teachers for their lessons. Between the lessons, the teachers will be sort of wiping down desks to make sure the rooms are clean for the pupils to come into. As one group goes out and another group comes in. We have that little bit of transition time that actually allows that to be the case, so that we make that work from that point. The Year 7, where they normally take an option of French, German or Latin for the beginning of Year 7, we're actually going to delay that probably there through till Christmas and just sort of have an extra lesson in French and provide a little bit more time for our sort of pastoral support as well, just from those lessons. So they will largely work together. Where they do games as a year group, they will come back together as a group. As a bubble, they are Year 7 altogether, and within that bubble, there are then the clusters. And what we're trying to do is that when pupils are inside in the classrooms, then that they are staying very much in one cluster. Where they're outside, either say break time, lunchtime, or games, then they can be there very much more back at their bubble. You know, the arrangements, what we've seen from this, the experience we've learned, is the arrangements, you can have slightly wider arrangements outside than you can necessarily inside. Okay, so that's really how Year 7 will work. For the Year 7 at the beginning, there on that Monday, the 7th of September, we'll be sending you, well, Dr. Speller will be sending you details there of meetings that will take place that day, where then you as parents will get to be able to meet the tutor. It'll be a virtual meeting, and your children will get to spend time with their tutor as well. Normally we run that in school. We've looked at the logistics of it. It really doesn't work in school at that point. So we will have to run that as a virtual thing. But we'll try and make that as normal as possible. That real chance there to make that contact with the tutor for both the pupils and for you. They are your real key person in your connection sort of with your child's progress and everything that's going on in their school life. So that's why we're really keen to make sure that happens. All right. Okay, so we've seemed to have gone quite quiet there. I think we're sort of happy with the questions. Have the tutor groups changed for year 7 for those that met before the summer? Yes, I have had to look at that in a different way. Yeah, to accommodate for the stream. Essentially, they haven't, because as soon as we can then come out of these extra arrangements that we've had to put in place, then they will go back to those tutor groups. So that tutor group will still exist as it did before, but I have there for that grouping had to make changes at this stage. Okay, I think I'll sort of wrap it up there then. I think that's the last of the questions come through. So say if anything else sort of comes up, you said we will be having those meetings on that Monday beforehand for anybody that's new, and I think any questions you might have might be answered from that. If there are really particular things that people have realised that they have missed, probably in the first instance, if you email either Dr. Speller on grs@rideschool.net for things relating to year 7 and 8, or Miss Dyer on the jad@rideschool.net for things for sort of year 9, 10 and 11. Okay, and things that they need to bring to me, they will then escalate to me to deal with. Okay. All right, then. I'll sign off there. Thank you. As before, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And as I say, it's good to see that most of you found that you found that helpful. And we look forward to welcoming both you and your pupils into school as soon as possible. All right. Okay. Good night then.